Sherdog.com here with Campbell McLaren, the executive producer of the first 22 Ultimate Fighting Championships. And what are your thoughts on this whole journey?
At UFC, first one, and it was called the Ultimate Fighting Championship back then, by the way. At the Ultimate Fighting Championship, I was sure Royce was going to be killed. I knew Art wasn't in this 100%, and he wanted to put on a good show and, you know, not embarrass himself. I leave it to history whether he achieved that. But, I mean, he was fighting Royce. There was only so many ways it was going to go. But I was sure, with that one glove, I thought it was going to be a scene from a cartoon, you know, when the cartoon character's fist spins around and Royce was going to shoot in and Art was going to hit him and knock his head off his body. I literally thought Royce was going to be, you know, brain dead at the end of that fight.
Who did you think was going to win?
Well, you know, if you look at the guys, Shamrock, I think, is the most impressive physical specimen, right? Gordeau looked like a guy that had been in a fight or two. I mean, Gordeau scared me, you know? And the tattoos and that sort of weird Hail Hitler thing he did to the crowd, that was just a lot of, you know, he looked like a bad guy. Taylor is maybe 1/20th the reason the UFC worked. I mean, that was the first fight. Taylor came out all his heart stampeding towards Gordeau and got knocked on his ass, and, you know, and the rest is literally history. Now, I'm in the booth, right? I'm in the truck, and we're going, that was 26 seconds. We're in a 3-hour block. How many fights do we have left? You know, that was kind of the feeling back then. We had no idea what was going to happen, you know? So, that's a good question. Who do I think looking at them? Probably Shamrock would have been the guy I picked. I mean, I think that's kind of how that would shake out. Again, Gordeau looked pretty scary. But it wouldn't have been Royce. And I, with full respect and love and admiration of the Gracies, you know, I said that. But I totally changed. You know, when I saw it in action, I went like, aha, we created this arena, this forum, this showcase, where guys came in and in a very clear way, you demonstrated whether you're willing to fight anyone and what would happen. You know, I know Taylor truly felt bad from that fight, but the truth of the matter is he went in. He stepped up. He went into the first fight of the first UFC. He didn't have any idea what he was facing, and he still went in. In my mind, everyone that went in was a hero. And if you won or surpassed your man or did something extraordinary, you rose up from like the Greek god level to the Zeus level. And if you look at the buy rates, right, if you compare in an apples to apples comparison, it's 25 million pay-per-view homes back then. Now it's whatever the number is, 85 million. You know, almost the entire country is addressable with pay-per-view. If you look at the buy rates, the UFC 2 through 9 make it into the top 20 of all time. And a couple of those are in the top 5 on a percentage basis, not an absolute number, right? If you look at how much percent of 25 million you got and extrapolate that, take it out to 100 million. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was primarily word of mouth. And it was the kind of thing, I wanted the UFC to be something, when you saw it, you went, oh my God, I have never seen anything like that. And everyone that saw it told 10 people, oh my God, you have never seen anything like that. See, I saw this as a creative project, right? I saw this as, let's go in and make the best creative decisions we can. Who's going to be in front of the camera? Who are the fighters? What's the environment for the fight? What's the vibe we're trying to get across? Joe Rogan, who I love, who has said some not nice things to my face, he said, my UFC was the Dark Ages. Yeah, it is. Beowulf is from the Dark Ages. King Arthur is from the Dark Ages. You know, the Dark Ages were a time of hero worship. It was knights fighting dragons, right? So I think we had a very elemental appeal in the beginning. This was a very simple thing, right? It was two men fighting with very little interference from any regulatory body. you know. And I think that the power of that and the visceral, overwhelming emotion of that comes through. Call it primitive if you want. I'll say elemental, right? It really hit guys in a place where they went, holy. You know, and I think the UFC fighter in those early days replaced the American iconic image of the cowboy, the gunslinger, you know. I hate all the comparisons to the gladiators. Gladiators were faceless minions that went in and were cut down for the amusement of the public. That has nothing to do with what the UFC did. The UFC put a spotlight on one man who was brave enough to go into the octagon and test his physical power, his training, his skill, and to see how that would do with every intentions of coming back for the next bout in the tournament or the next event. It was a very different thing.
Who is the creator? Because I've seen all of you claim in one spot or another, you know, I'm the one who created the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
Well, you mean of Art, Horion, and I?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't pick one. You know, success has many fathers and failure's an orphan, right? I mean, there's no UFC without Horion. There's no UFC without the Gracies. There's not. It doesn't exist. There's nothing without Horion. And Royce. You know, but Horion. Nothing without them. Art had the energy, the tenacity, and the idea that he could make it work. So he was the energy. I was the only one that saw it could be a TV show. So none of us were at cross purposes. And then someone, you know, that gets left off the list a lot is David Isaacs, you know. And he was the BMG exec that was sort of sent over to Semaphore to keep track of all the money it was losing. And, you know, David's a really bright guy. He was at law school with Barack Obama, you know, smart guy. And David's the one that turned it into a business. David did the international TV deals. David did the video deals. David wrote the rules with Larry Hazard from the New Jersey Commission. You know, David is the one that made it a bona fide, legitimate business. So, you can't, you know, I don't care. Art did it. Art's the father.
You guys started out in rules pretty quick. When would you say this thing went from spectacle, from TV show, from Mortal Kombat Live, to a sport?
Well, I've had a lot of critics say I'm not the one to answer that question. You know, I also said banned in 49 states. We had done it, I think, in 7 states, and I was still saying that. I kept expecting someone to count at one point. You know, the U.S. has 50 states. You know, if we'd have said actually as safe as high school football and not illegal in any state, that's not such a good phrase. So when did we start to look at this? Well, we start to look at it pretty quickly. Let me tell you, you're in the truck and you see the Taylor Tooley fight. After 26 seconds, we're all going, you know, we're going to have to finesse. This isn't going to really play out. There was no marketing budget. We had to go out on the controversy. You know who's the father of the UFC? Controversy. Because it's easy to say, you know, in 2013, looking 20 years back, and John McCain finally starting to, you know, maybe finally ride off into the sunset. It's easy to say, I went too far, or whoever went too far. It was me. I went too far. The truth is, we didn't have marketing budgets. We didn't have social media. We didn't have a way to reach the fans. We had to do it. And the press played along. The press loved this. You know, they loved it. And the sports writers would not write about this. Brought in Jim Brown to get the sports writers, and they still wouldn't write about it. The rules did come later. You know, why did the UFC get turned off in so many cable networks? It's a historical matter. It's there for anyone that cares to go and research. It's just maybe not so interesting. Almost every cable network, Cablevision, Comcast, everyone was coming up for a renewal of their licenses in DC, and they were making quite a bit of money on pornography, because that's the cable business, that's the internet business,
Pay-per-view business.
pay-per-view business, and there was increasing scrutiny on that business, and as part of the gimme to John McCain and political establishment, they said, well, we're not going to, that's right, that blood and guts stuff, we're not down for that. Don't mention the pornography. The pornography thing is just between consenting. It was really, the UFC was sacrificed on that altar, to keep the porno money flowing. It's really amazing what has happened in 20 years. This is a sport that came of age in the internet era. It's a sport that came of age in social media. And it's really tied into that. And I think that what we've seen is a process that used to take 100 years or 75 years was done in less than 2 decades. A sport was created, came to greatness. I don't know if it's seen its golden era, its golden age. Maybe it's yet to come. But we've seen such a fast forward here with this. And it's had politics. It was mixed up with someone that ran for president. I was a cartoon in Mad Magazine. It was a cover story in Mad Magazine. It has been on many, many TV shows, written about endlessly. It is part of the social culture of the United States and to a degree the world, all within a 20-year span.